Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, From Laid Off to Lifted Up: Courageous Tools to Regroup, Reshape, and Reimagine. I'm Christy Denbrock, Chief Learning Officer at NEHA. We are honored to welcome back Dr. Lucy Houghton. Dr. Houghton is a courage and well-being researcher, registered nurse, and expert strategist in organizational thriving. She holds a PhD in leadership and human performance, along with degrees in biology, exercise science, nursing, and sports medicine. With over 25 years of experience, Dr. Houghton has dedicated her career to helping people perform at their best under pressure. She spent 10 years as an athletic trainer for collegiate and Olympic athletes and 15 years as a nurse in emergency services and community health. This unique background has given her unparalleled insight into human resistance, resilience, and thriving. Currently, Dr. Houghton co-leads a task force focused on reducing burnout in the largest healthcare system in the United States. Her expertise has been sought by organizations ranging from the United States Secret Service to Southern Oregon University. Dr. Houghton's mission is to equip leaders with tools to create thriving workplaces and rehumanize work. Today, she brings us expertise to help professionals navigate career transitions with courage and hope. We ask that you please write any questions or comments you may have into the chat box, and we will address them. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Lucy Houghton. Lucy, shall we begin?
Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful, warm welcome, and I really appreciate it. I am just going to do the technical stuff on this side. All right. Pull you guys back.
That looks great.
Fantastic. So, welcome to From Laid Off to Lifted Up: Courageous Tools to Regroup, Reset, and Reimagine. I want to share a little bit about what this space was designed for and really encourage you to utilize the chat in a specific way. I will ask questions along the way that are prompts for you to help you think about reflecting and what's showing up and what's meaningful to you, and ask that the chat is used to really fuel that conversation and to stay focused into those prompts so that we can interact together and be in community together, and add your questions in. And then I would also ask that we can keep the chat to that specific conversation so that while we are all going through this together, we can stay focused together and we don't get distracted. This space was designed with environmental health professionals in mind. You have spent your career serving the public, often behind the scenes, often without recognition that you deserve. And now you're navigating a season of upheaval that you did not choose. You might be feeling grief, anger, fear, numbness, betrayal. All of that belongs here. Some of you may also feel relief or a twinge of excitement, or maybe a flicker of hope. And that all belongs here too. You don't have to bounce back right now. You don't have to pretend to be fine in this space. My ask is that you are open in our time together to taking one small, true step for you that moves you forward. Today, our time together is about reclaiming your story, finding support, and taking that one tiny next step. Our session success. So here's how we know if we're successful together. we recognize one way to regroup and reset. Just one. We can identify one person who can help. And we identify one small action that you can take to move forward. So I'd like you to drop into the chat your one word for where you are right now, how you're feeling right now. Just drop it into the chat. There may be a little bit of a delay for me, so I'm going to watch the chat here for just a moment and see, where are you? For me today, I feel excitement. I see uneasy. Yeah, treading water. Yes, treading water. Yeah. And as we share, one of the things that's so powerful about our chat is that we see we are not alone. We're not alone in feeling uneasy. We're not alone in feeling like we're treading water. And I think you'll see how that relates and how I can specifically relate to you today in sharing a little story with you. So Neha contacted me with a request to be a part of a series of talks meant to support federal employees who had just been laid off from their jobs. I commend the organization. What an incredible way to be in support. But I had a secret, not a bad secret, just a part of my life that I like to keep separate from my speaking life. I too was a federal employee. And on that very day, I had just received some of the hardest news of my federal career. My boss had told me that information had been released about our organization's RIF plan, and my position was not going to make it. She said she couldn't be sure, but based on the information that she had, it seemed fairly certain, and that I should start preparing to lose my job. I'd worked in the federal government for over 12 years. And during that time, just as many of you, I had achieved some of the most meaningful milestones of my professional career. I helped save millions of dollars to reduce unnecessary training costs. I shortened the amount of time, not me alone, but part of my work was shortening the amount of time that clinicians spent charting. I decreased nursing intent to leave by over 16%. I helped people recognize and recover from their burnout. I was the thought leader of the gratitude app that had been used over 800,000 times to share messages of appreciation, recognition, and joy. I was making a positive difference, and I loved my job. So in this moment, I was in a bit of a conundrum. I had been asked to help people, you, who had just been laid off, on the same day I learned that I would now need this very talk. So I paused for a few moments. I shared my story, and I decided that the very best thing that I could do was to say yes, and then get to work using the tools that I developed through my research on courageous leadership and how to summon courage in times that are hard, and put those tools to use so that I could bring to you tested and tried tools that perhaps can help. So in the meantime, like many of you, I'm sure, my job also got caught up in the legal mess. And so while I suspect that some of you had been separated, some of you also may be caught in limbo. But limbo is no longer where I'm setting my sights. It's still where I remain, but my sights are not set there. Some days are still hard. I get scared, but I have a path forward, and I no longer feel that uncertainty and that discomfort are what rule my everyday. And I feel more comfortable with the unknown. And today I want to share with you 3 of the tools that helped me the most and that in my research I found helped other leaders the most. My hope is that at least one of them will be in service to you. So, what's the big idea? I always think it's really important as we do this kind of work together that we just get clear about what is the big idea. So if through our time together, you take only one nugget away, just one thing, that you know exactly where you can focus your attention. And I would say, so if there's one idea I want you to leave today with, let it be this: you are not alone. The greatest control that we have in moments like this is how we respond and who we choose to go through it with. And you are not alone. In sharing with you today the 3 tools that I have found to really help me to transition from that constant feeling inside of, I don't know how to breathe through this. Like, I don't feel like there's enough breath to help me breathe through this, to, okay, I've got this. Stay focused. Stay focused. And I see, chaos and uncertainty in the chat as well. And yes, uncertainty, chaos, absolutely. And I'd say these 3 tools are intended to help you cut through the chaos. The chaos will be there, but it helps us to see at least our own path a little bit clearer. So in Regroup is all around the idea, and I don't know, and just pop a yes in the chat if this has been something for you. And I think perhaps it depends on how long you were in the position where you've experienced being laid off, or how long you've been doing this work. I'm not sure, but pop a yes in the chat if you felt like part of who you are was attached to what you do. I know for me, after 12 years, that I see myself as a civil servant, as a nurse who is in service to the people around me, to my fellow American community. And so knowing that that is no longer going to be a part of my identity, I think one of the most important things for us to recognize is that we are not what we do. We're so much more than that. What we do is a part of how we express who we are. It's a mechanism for us to express our purpose. Losing a job doesn't have to mean losing your identity. It certainly doesn't mean you lose your value or your voice. And just to be clear, we didn't lose our jobs. We didn't misplace them carelessly. We were separated from our jobs, in which then many of them were eliminated. We didn't put them somewhere and forget. It was a separation. But that separation shows up as loss. And so in regrouping, I want you to know that you are still whole, still worthy, still capable of making meaningful impact. And it can be helpful to have a couple of strategies to know how do we separate ourselves from who we are and from what we did. The first one is to normalize and process the grief. This is a major loss. Treat it like any other major loss in your life. Give yourself the space and the grace to grieve. I had the incredible opportunity of sitting next to on a panel where we were presenting to the US Secret Service a few years ago with a retired Navy SEAL who shared that one of the most important things that he learned in reclaiming who he was the power of allowing for grief. And he would just so clearly say, just cry, just let it out. And to acknowledge that when we move all of that out, we move emotions through motion. And so treat your job like the major loss that it is. Allow yourself to feel shock, to feel anger, to feel sadness, and gradually to feel acceptance, to understand that this is a process and it's not a linear process. It takes time, and sometimes it sneaks up unexpectedly. Sometimes you may be in a conversation that feels, and you feel just fine, and then one moment you don't. That's okay. That's grief. That's normal for us to feel. And once the shock settles, rebuild a routine. Part of regrouping is all around rebuilding a routine, because when we build a routine, even if it's a small, tiny routine, and I actually recommend starting small because small feels possible. It can look like exercise. And exercise might mean you take a walk for 5 minutes, or you stand outside and allow sunshine to be on your face. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it is healthy for you. And then perhaps you look at a small chunk of focused time for job search activities. And I say a chunk of time because that alone can feel all-consuming. And perhaps you set a time for networking. It's a specific time for you to network. Who's one person I can reach out to today? When we do these kinds of activities, it helps us to restore our purpose and order so that we have some path forward during the chaos. Number 2, reset. Neurobiology shows us that our brains are not wired for confidence, for courage, or even accuracy. I'll let that sink in for a moment, because the first time I read the studies around that, I will say that I had this natural resistance. Like, what do you mean we're not wired for accuracy? Our brains are wired beautifully for a single purpose. It's not the only thing our brains do, but the main objective is to keep us alive. We are wired for survival. We are wired to self-protect when we feel like we are in danger. Courage shows up in 3 places: where there is change, where there is harm, where there is shame. For some of us, we're experiencing one of those. I would say likely if you're here, you're experiencing one of those, right? Change. For others, we may also be experiencing levels of harm and shame as well. And all of that, no matter which one, two, or three you might be experiencing, your brain is likely interpreting that exactly the way it is intended to. That there is danger and that survival has now become the focus. Your brain wants to make meaning of these situations. It wants to figure out, can this harm us? What should we do with that information? How do we protect? What's causing it? Who caused it? Is that dangerous? It wants to make meaning of all of that. But what creeps in, and it's why reset ends up being so important, what creeps in is this little voice that starts to share and create stories, whether they are true or not. So our brain identifies situations, it creates stories about those situations, lots of them. And then we meet those scenarios and all of those ideas that we've created in our mind about what could happen from this situation with emotion. So you can think about emotion as a motivator. That's what one of the reasons that emotions exist for us is to motivate us. And so our brain rewards us for choosing to believe one of those stories. And in moments like this, it can be incredibly easy to latch on to fear-based stories. And why wouldn't we? It is scary. There is fear involved. But our brain also will start to interject other stories on top, like the inner critic shows up. I've failed. I'm not needed. And think about if this has been true for you. Just pop a yes into the chat if you've had one of these thoughts, just even if it's fleeting. I'm not needed. It's over. It's my fault. I should have seen this coming. This is going to ruin my life. This is going to hurt my children. How is this going to affect my marriage? I'll never find work again. I'll never find work that pays me the money that I was making. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills, and that's on me. Yeah. These are the stories that run through our head. And where we grab them and give them power and tell them that they're true, they can become true for us, and they can keep us stuck. The intent of survival brain is to keep you in self-protection. But what I learned in my courage research was that chronic self-protection is harmful to us because it keeps us stuck exactly where we are. And I have a suspicion that many of us who are here today do not want to stay right where we are. We don't want to stay in the chaos or the uncertainty or not knowing or jobless. We want to move forward. We want to feel successful. We want to make meaning. We want to give. We want to serve. It's what we love to do. And so while these stories are understandable, they're natural, and in some rights they're somewhat, perhaps some of them may have some truth, right? There may be some truth in the end that it can create in some parts of our lives, but they're not the whole truth. And more importantly, they are not helping you move forward. They leave us, if you can think about it like this, they can leave us walking backwards. Think about going down a trail you have never been on, all new, and walking backwards and trying to navigate that trail. These stories leave us doing that because our sights are still set on what we lost. And like I said in the beginning, time for grieving and processing that is important. We need to sit and be with that. But if we stay looking at what we lost or what was separated from us, we really take away our power to turn forward, to face forward towards this new path, towards what's possible. So I invite you today to try a reframe. Shift the story. What am I leaving or moving away from to facing forward? And think, what do I want to move towards? So drop it in the chat. Think about it for a moment. What am I moving away from to what do I want to move towards? What's your future path? Whether you know it or not, doesn't matter. What do you want? What's one thing you would like to move towards? You don't have to know how to get there. Don't let the tyranny of how get in your way of just dreaming about what's possible or what it is you want now. So what do you want to see in front of you? What do you want to move toward? Let's reset. For me, I want to move toward helping even more people be the best light that they can be in the world. That's the thing that lights me up more than anything. What about you? Move away from toxicity. Move toward a healthier future. Yes. Yeah. Healthier future. That seems like a much better place to focus attention. What else do you want? I highly recommend that you write it down. Neurobiologically, just the same that we are wired for survival, we are also wired in a way that when we put pen to paper, when we write down what we want, when we see it in front of us, it helps us turn towards the future. And it helps it to become real. So don't get stuck in the how. Just write down, what is it? And then number 3, reimagine. So reimagine may not be exactly what you're thinking. And I saw in the chat as well that someone had posed the question, or the thought was around considering, who can I reach out to today? Reimagine is about that question. Reimagine is really about connection. Who can help us reimagine what is possible? One of the things that I found in my courage research was that let me start with that there are 4 main pillars of courage. We think about courage as just this thing we do, but really it's a whole set of skills, and they fall into 4 buckets: believing deeply in ourselves, belonging to ourselves, having a reflective, safe space for ourselves to process all the stuff, and 4th is to develop courageous connections. And that looks a certain way. I call that the Courage Council. Honestly, I thought that one was a nice to have, not a need to have. The more research I did, the more interviews I did, the more stories I've heard, which have been hundreds at this point, I learned that I was wildly wrong. It is not a nice to have. It's a need to have, and I'll share with you why. But when you think about stories, right? And that's the deal with every human being. We all have stories, the story of our life. And so oftentimes I think we see ourselves as the character in the story. We forget that while we may be the main character in our story, perhaps, we're also the author of our own stories. But if you think about any main character in a story, whether it has been a factual story, whether it has been a fictional story, there may be a story out there where this isn't true, but I can't think of one yet. I haven't seen a story where the main character gets through hard chapters in their life alone. And I would say, even if we can find those examples, I don't think that they're an example of what to do. Like I shared, I've conducted and read hundreds of courage interviews. And one of the things that leaders told me, and these leaders were from all the gamuts, from West Point graduates to high-ranking commanders, heads of states, CEOs of global companies, household names, all of them told me the same thing over and over. We can choose courage without courageous connections, but it will take us weeks, months, and sometimes years longer to achieve the same rate of success. And success was defined for them in many, many ways. But moving forward was the theme of it all. They could go exponentially faster when they were clear exactly who sat on their courage council. Their courage council shrank their fear and apathy barriers. And those barriers keep us stuck in inaction. And so when they had their courage council in place, they could take massive action exponentially faster. And that is not just true for them, that was true for every single participant in my studies. And it was true for me. Your courage council is a support team. They're people who can see your potential even when you don't. There's an entire framework around the Courage Council, and that was all developed around what all of these interviews came to show as the 4 most important groups of people to sit at that table. But in the sake, or in honor of our time and for the sake of our time together, I want to recommend you start with one group, the hype circle. Because when we're going through something this big, the hype circle can project you forward. It's kind of like a super bounce on a trampoline. If you've ever been on a trampoline, I don't even know if people are on trampolines anymore. But when I was a kid, you'd jump on the trampoline with your friend. And if you were kind of going like this, it was great. But there was just this one moment where you might hit that trampoline at the same time and you would fly up. And I think it's like that. It's the super bounce of the trampoline, right? And so that's what your hype circle is able to do. They help project you forward faster than you could on your own. These people believe fiercely in you. They remind you of your worth. They celebrate your wins, whether they're big or small. It could be like, the win could be, I got out of bed, I put my clothes on, I ate my breakfast, I took a 5-minute walk. We're celebrating that win, if that's a win for you. They celebrate those things with you, and they reflect back to you that you are capable. All the reasons you're capable and why. They remind you that you are going to be okay. Even when these times feel suffocating and scary, and it doesn't feel like we're going to be okay. They remind you that you have skills, knowledge, ability, amazing capability inside of you. And so when you struggle to believe in yourself, you can borrow their belief. This is exactly what I did as well. I got really clear on this, and I want to share with you how I did this so that when you think about this for yourself, you can think about, what is it that I need? How is it that I want that to show up for me? So for me, one of the people in my hype circle was my father. I chose him very deliberately because I knew he had gone through a layoff when I was a kid. I remember what that was like. And I remember that it felt uncertain and it felt a little scary. But we made it through. And so I knew that he could relate to where I was, but I also know that he believes fiercely in me. And so when I called him and I told him what was going on, I said, Dad, here's what I need. I need someone who can reflect back to me the reasons I'm going to be okay, because I'm really struggling to see it right now. And most importantly, and I need you to stop me if you can't be this for me, I need you to not be afraid for me, because we couldn't both be in fear. And he said, I've got you. He knew he could do that because he had been there. And so he was able. And the reason I call those things out specifically is because if someone needs to sit in fear with you, that's not helpful. That's not going to move you forward in that moment. But if they can fiercely reflect back to you all the reasons that you are capable of taking the next step, what happens next is that you can get into brainstorming with them. What is possible? What can we do? What are steps I could take? And we came up with plan A, B, C, and D. And what he said then was, it is up to you to figure out which one comes first. But no matter what you choose, I know you're going to be okay. And so I want to invite you right now, pen and paper, think of 2 to 3 people that are in your hype circle. Mentors, friends, colleagues, former colleagues, family members. Who are they? Who can reflect back to you, believes fiercely in you, and will not jump into fear with you? Write their names down. These folks are parachutes for us. It is not their responsibility to hold us up, but we can fly on their strength and belief in us. It helps us to be able to turn falling into flying. I want to just remind you as well that they're not just there for emotional support. They're mirrors to your values, your strengths, your knowledge, skills, abilities, achievements, and most importantly, your potential. So let's name them. I invite you to drop into the chat. You don't have to put their name, but is this a friend for you? Colleague? Past mentor? Current mentor? Who is it? Is this a family member? Who reflects back to you? Who is a mirror to you for your values, your strength, and your potential? And I'm just pausing in the chat. Yeah, friends, current mentor. And these people can end up being even more than just the hype circle, right? they can also be your network or part of your network. One of my past supervisors also was in the situation that I'm experiencing, that I'm navigating. And we've been there. We can reflect back to each other, right? I don't feel afraid for her. I can see her potential. She doesn't feel afraid for me. She can see my potential, and we reflect it back. But we also support each other in sharing job postings, references, helping each other. Yeah, my husband. Yeah. Write down their names. 2 to 3. Make it real. Because we're going to create our mini map or micro map. It's tiny. The idea here is that we know that when we look at big pictures of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, that feels impossible, right? So if we were to define courage, it's deliberately choosing what is right for us in the face of risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And one of the ways that we can summon our courage to walk through this chaos is to shrink that picture. I often am a big fan of zooming out to see big picture. I think that can be really helpful in certain situations. But in moments like this, it can also be helpful for us to zoom in and look at what is one thing we can do, right? We know that where our energy or where our energy goes, our attention flows. If you've ever heard that, I always think that that's something that I hold in my mind, and I need my attention to be focused on the future, not backwards, right? Not towards, like I think Elizabeth had said, not towards the toxicity, but towards the healthier future. And so where my energy goes, my attention flows. And if we can really help to focus that into a tiny step that we can take, it helps us get moving. And then that's where we see courage shift into confidence. Then we start to feel, oh, this is going to be okay. I am going to be okay. I am going to move through this. And so a micro map is just a tiny set of steps. And so I want you to consider these. What is one small action you can take to move forward today? And drop it in the chat. One small action. Is it emailing one person? Is it making one update on your resume? Is it taking a walk? Is it reaching out to one person in your hype circle and asking them to remind you of your potential? And I'll tell you, when you do that, you're not done until you're blushing, okay? Because we've all done such incredible, amazing things. I know you will be blushing. That's when you're there. When you're writing your resume, it's the same way. When you're telling your story, you've done amazing things. Own it. Maybe it's brainstorming unconventional employment ideas. For me, I am moving plan A and plan B and plan C all at the same time. I'm not recommending that. That's big. I've zoomed out a little bit because I've built the capacity to do that. I started with just plan A. Plan A for me looked like I created a routine. It was a tiny routine. I got up in the morning, I had my chai, and while I was having my chai, after I had updated my resume, I would apply for one job. That was it. Then I put it away for the rest of the day, just one, and I let it go. I'm on to being able to do those bigger things because of being able to move through that. Perhaps it's creating that very simple routine. What's one thing you can do to create a routine? one thing you can learn that might help you move forward. And even if it doesn't matter, because when our brain is in the learning mode, it's also in the future and hopeful mode. Waking up earlier, yeah. And it doesn't have to be a lot earlier. You can start small, right? Maybe you just wake up 5 minutes earlier, 15 minutes earlier, and you can grow that to whatever that goal is that you want so that you can claim that time. Other ways that you could have one tiny step is, I know a lot of my colleagues have told me, and people during interviews that I've done as well, have told me that when they're in really hard times like this, one of the most challenging moments for them is to get out of bed. Just to get out of bed. Because then you're facing all the things, right? And so in that, one of my favorite recommendations, because I find it incredibly helpful, I find it helpful for so many different tasks in my life, is Mel Robbins' 5-4-3-2-1 that she recommends. And so that is basically this tiny little practice where you count down, you count backwards, right? When we count backwards in our brain and we get to 0, it's like there's nowhere else to go. So you can't count it forward. You can't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because then your brain's like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? And it could go on forever. When we count backwards, and then on that 0, you take the action just immediately and you launch yourself out of bed. So you can literally just wake up, open your eyes and say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action. And just move. Put your feet on the floor. Interesting little side note is that in our house, my 13-year-old fosters neonatal kittens. So kittens that are 0 days old to 6 weeks old. I take the night shift for feeding those babies because they have to be fed every 2 to 3 hours. This is the technique I use to launch myself out of bed when I'm so darn tired. And so it can be really useful in these times when it's hard as well. Another one is writing what it is that you want and putting it on your phone. We all tend at this point to look at our phone quite a bit, and there's a way to save your screen. And when you see on your screen what it is you want to move forward towards, that can really help remind you that that's where you want to focus your attention and your energy. So courage doesn't need to be huge. It just needs to be true for you. So building your map. All right, what and who do you need to take that step? So whatever your step is, what or who do you need? So is there someone that can help you take the step forward? So if it is sprucing up your resume or looking at actions that can help you move forward, I think that there's another talk, is that right, Christy, on that as well. So showing up for the next series can help you take that action forward. So perhaps it's getting that on the calendar. If it is, perhaps for me, what I needed to do was like, I don't know, I hadn't done an interview in 12 years. I didn't even remember what that was like. And that felt a little intimidating. So I practiced. I had my first interview yesterday. I didn't feel nervous, or as nervous as I think I would have had I not practiced, right? Taking one step. What else? What else do you need? Who do you need? Get them on the list, and that could be the action, honestly, is reaching out. All right, so we have gone through looking at the regroup, processing the grief, setting a routine, resetting ourselves, right? Is number 2. Getting clear about what are the things we're telling ourselves in our mind that are not helpful and how to reframe. So if we're going from I'm worried about or I'm afraid of, how can we shift that to I can take a step forward to, right? We're looking at mitigating and preventing those things and focusing on the future and the hope that's possible for each one of us. And then third is reimagining. Reimagine that this doesn't have to be something you're doing alone. We're not meant to go through hard things alone. So, who is on your hype circle that you can ask to reflect so that you can reimagine what's possible for you? And then taking action on your mini micro app. In the spirit of connection, because what we've seen in the research is that the fastest way forward through hard times is through true connection with each other, where people want to support you, to lift you up, and you want to do the same for them. And we don't need to have it all figured out today. But if this session helped even just a little bit, and you felt truly connected, I want to be in connection with you. So I want to invite you, if you are attending the AEC the AEC conference in July, come visit me. I have a pre-con session on addressing compassion fatigue in environmental health, and I can't imagine a time where compassion fatigue is going to show up more than in trying times like this. I want to also invite you to come and visit me. I will have a booth this year, which is going to be so much fun. And I think I will absolutely have the funnest swag around. So come visit me at booth 417. And lastly, I want to invite you as my personal guest to join the Courage Connection. It's a school that I created where we all share tools and skills from the research and more. And so I want to share that with you. I want to invite you to be my guest. If it sounds of interest to you, please know that we have opened up access to the Courage School for free of charge for anyone here who has been affected by these layoffs. You are welcome to share this as well with anyone who you think would benefit. It's free for a year for you. Come join. Join for a day, join for a month, join for the whole year, whatever suits you. Go and grab the tools, look around, introduce yourself. Be in community with other folks who are also practicing their courage as well. And with me, we have we do monthly webinars like this. We've got one coming up in 2 weeks. And please, I would love and be honored for you to be my guest. We'll be releasing 2 new courses in there as well that will be completely free to you. One is on the 7 strategies for navigating overwhelm. One is on the courage foundations, where you'll build the 4 foundational courage skills that will help you write your next chapter, because your next chapter is yours to write. I believe that it can be bold and beautiful and grounded in who you truly are. Every single one of us. I know that that's true for us. So I hope you'll join and let the school be a beacon of light for you. And I'd love to know from you today, what is your biggest takeaway? Just one word, drop it in the chat, your one word takeaway. What has been your nugget, the thing that resonates with you? We know in the neuroscience that when we write down our one biggest takeaway, that it helps us to remember and to use that knowledge moving forward. So drop it into the chat. What's your one biggest takeaway?
Lucy, you have given us so much information. I have like 2 pages of written notes of things you have said that I want to keep. We have a few minutes left. Can I ask you one question that's been nagging the back of my mind?
Yes, please.
You gave us so much information of how to get started.
Yeah.
What happens or what is part two if you get started in this job search? You do your resume, you're looking, you map out your micro map, you get discouraged.
Yes.
How do you get back on track?
Yeah. It is such an important question. And honestly, it's one of the places that I think the practice that I'm doing right now is anchoring into that future. It's why setting that routine is so important. It's why doing things like, what is it that I want, right? Getting really clear about where do I want to go, and doing things like put that on your phone so that it reminds you every day and you can go, oh yeah, that's where I'm going, right? And to remind yourself that every one of those rejection emails that you get is just one step closer. It's just a numbers game, really, of how many we have to go through before we find the one that's meant for us. And so I see it that way. I celebrate those moments as well. So I've got a stack for me. And anytime a rejection comes in, I say, oh, I'm one step closer. And I think
Like that.
that kind of reframe, right? It's all about the reframe, because our brain's wired for self-protection. It wants to sink us into that fear so that we feel safe, but it doesn't really keep us safe. It does if a bus is coming by and we're about to step out in the road. That keeps us safe, right? But it doesn't chronically if we are chronically in self-protection. So we have to reframe. And so we can just use that mindset. And those are some of the tools that are in the school, as well as like, how do we start to shift that language for us so that we are moving forward? And it's not with just this like whimsical, positive mindset. There is action behind what we're doing. So we're not just thinking this is going to be great, something great's going to happen. I do believe that. I do think that, but I am taking action and working my tail off to make it happen. And when we're in connection with each other as well, it's one of the reasons I think that Courage Council is so darn important, because those folks are going to help you remember what you're moving towards. And I think this as well is one of the things that I hold on to. Beginnings, because this picture, right, is of the sunrise. It's not the sunset. And so I think beginnings have a way of disguising themselves as endings. And so if we can remember that, remember to keep going. An ending is also a beginning. We just need to keep going.
Dr. Lucy, you never disappoint. That's why we keep asking you back. Thank you so much for your time today. And for those of you who joined us as well, again, please reach out to Dr. Houghton. She is fabulous. She will respond. And if you're at the AEC, please sign up for the pre-con and visit her at the booth. And we hope you have enjoyed this session. And we ask that you please take a few moments to fill out the short survey. Your feedback is instrumental in allowing us to bring the topics you need and to complete our mission at NEHA, which is to build, sustain, and empower an effective environmental workforce. Again, thank you all for joining us. And Lucy, of course, thank you. I look forward to seeing you in July in Phoenix. And we wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.